Her smile was just a little too wide, her tan far too even, and her eyes, something flickered in them that made my heart tighten. On the surface, it looked like a perfectly ordinary return from vacation. Hugs, kisses, kids holding welcome signs, a passionate evening filled with whispers. But behind that flawless facade, something didn't add up. A single, barely noticeable inconsistency, and suddenly you can't breathe, can't sleep, can't forget. And when the truth begins to seep through the smallest of details, the lack of a tan line where a ring once was, a stranger's name in her messages, laughter that rings just a little too brightly, there's no turning back. Because you realize the way back no longer exists. You haven't just lost trust. You found yourself at the heart of a carefully concealed betrayal. And now you have more than just proof. You have a plan. Cold, precise, devastating. And the worst part? You still love the one who broke you. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watch this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. We stood in tense anticipation near the baggage claim, our eyes darting among the travelers. My brother-in-law, Benjamin, waited with me, flanked by his daughters, 9-year-old Daphne and Lily, who was 7. My own children, Daniel, 12, and Sophie, also 9, hovered excitedly nearby. The kids proudly held a massive sign above their heads. "Welcome home, mommies." It had been a full 2 weeks since my wife Melanie and her sister Hannah had flown off to bask in the warmth of Belize. Escaping Minnesota's brutal January chill had almost become a family ritual, and this getaway offered the sisters a chance to soak up the sun and unwind. After a while, the first wave of arriving passengers began to file out. When the children finally glimpsed their mothers, they burst out in joyous shouts. Melanie and Hannah, glowing from their tropical retreat, both looked happier than ever, their faces bright and their skin bronzed by the sun. Melanie swept Daniel and Sophie into her arms, covering them with affectionate hugs and kisses. Then, turning to me, she greeted me with a long, lingering kiss that spoke volumes. I wrapped my arms around her, not wanting the moment to end. "I missed you every minute," I murmured softly. Melanie leaned in, her tone teasing yet full of warmth. "Just wait until tonight. I'll make sure you know how much I missed you too." She kept that promise later that evening. After 15 years together, Melanie knew me inside and out, and she understood exactly how much tan lines drove me crazy. With the kids asleep, we slipped away to our room. "Go lie down and wait for me," she whispered, a playful glint in her eye as she disappeared into the bathroom. Soon enough, I found myself under the covers, anticipation building. When Melanie finally returned, she wore nothing but a tiny thong bikini. Her face, always her most striking feature, radiated happiness, her smile wide and genuine. Still, Melanie often struggled with self-doubt. She'd talk about being too petite or lacking curves, or fret about her body's changes after pregnancy. Though her breasts had filled out over the years, she never seemed satisfied. But as she struck a pose at the edge of the bed, every line and curve seemed flawless to me, her golden tan accentuating her beauty. Slowly, she slid her thong down, revealing a sharp contrast between her tanned skin and the untouched pale areas. Subtle lines marked where the bikini had shielded her from the sun. The sight made my heart race. Then, with a gentle motion, she undid her bikini top and let it fall away, exposing her soft, pale breasts. I couldn't hold back any longer. Sitting up, I reached for her, showering her with kisses as my hands explored her warm, sun-kissed skin. My touch sent shivers through her, and soon we lost ourselves in one another, my longing for her overwhelming. Several times I found myself nuzzling into her, breathing in the scent I'd missed so much. "It's so good to be home," she breathed, her voice trembling with emotion. I missed you too. We spent most of that night reconnecting, holding each other close. A few days passed, and I found Melanie scrubbing the bathroom tub. I paused in the hallway, captivated by the sway of her hips as she worked. She must have sensed my gaze because she glanced over her shoulder, grinning. "What's got you staring?" she teased. I told her the truth. I was fantasizing about what I'd do if she wasn't wearing those pants and the house was quiet. She laughed and called me a pervert, obviously entertained. She slipped off her gloves, tossing them aside, then walked over with a sultry swagger. Pressing up against me, she whispered, "That's what you call temptation." Usually I would have responded in kind, but an unexpected feeling of unease crept over me. Something wasn't right, though I couldn't pinpoint what it was. Melanie looked a little confused by my lack of response. "Typical," she joked. "All talk, no follow-through." She gave a playful shake of her hips before turning back to her cleaning. It was then that a minute detail caught my attention. So small, but enough to send a chill through me. I froze, made a quick excuse about needing something in the garage, and slipped out, unsure if she even heard. Alone at my workbench, I tried to reason with the unsettling thought gnawing at me. Had Melanie been unfaithful while away? She was charming, and I'd always known that other men noticed her. The thing I'd noticed seemed to make sense only if something had happened on her trip. The fear gripped me. If I found out she'd betrayed me, I knew I couldn't stay. The pain of even considering it, especially for the sake of our children, was almost unbearable. What could have made her do this to us? Had I somehow fallen short as a partner? These questions ran through my mind over and over, even though I had nothing concrete, just a gut feeling that something had changed. But how could I ever know for sure? If anything had happened, it was far away, in another country. Directly confronting her seemed pointless. She would only deny it. I considered asking Hannah, but both sisters were stubborn to the core, so that would get me nowhere either. Growing up, I'd always been aware of how close sisters could be. If one of them did something questionable, the other was rarely far behind. These suspicions weighed on me, so I knew I needed to talk things over with Benjamin. Before I could do so, though, Melanie called out for me, prompting me to head back inside the house. "Why have you been out in the garage all this time?" Melanie asked, her tone tinged with concern. "You've been out there for more than 2 hours. You'll get sick." I brushed off her worry with a casual, "Just tidying up out there," and left it at that. But a new thought was already forming in my mind. I had no desire to spend the night in the same room as her. On top of that, I'd been fighting off a cold all day and honestly needed the rest. I opted to crash on the couch instead. Melanie clearly wasn't thrilled about it. "Fine," she relented. "I'll make you some chamomile tea before bed. Maybe that'll help." After Melanie headed to bed, I was left alone, wrestling with an endless barrage of thoughts. What had motivated her to do this? What choices did I really have? Should I go straight to Benjamin and ask if he could confirm anything about Hannah? Suddenly, I realized there might be a concrete way to learn the truth about Melanie's fidelity. She had recently become fixated on maintaining constant contact with her friends. Melanie's Facebook network was enormous, easily 600 or 700 people. Her Yahoo address book was even larger. If she had kept in touch with someone from Belize, I was sure there would be an email trail. Still, knowing that we both had access to each other's passwords, she might have used a different email. As I drifted off, an idea started to come together. The next morning, I was exhausted and struggled to keep my mind on work. That day, I made an appointment to meet a divorce lawyer on Friday and contacted Benjamin to invite him out to lunch. He sounded surprised but agreed. When we met, I laid everything out for him. At first, Benjamin chuckled and tried to make light of it, but when he saw how serious I was, he promised to see if Hannah was guilty of the same thing. Claiming I was sick, I left work early and arrived home by mid-afternoon. Right away, I installed a keystroke logger on our computer. It took a week before anything surfaced. Melanie eventually logged into a separate email account using the username BeachDreams1975. Her password was a mashup of our children's names and their birth years, Shedav92. Just days after coming back from Belize, she and Brian were in constant email contact. The exchanges between Melanie and Hannah left no doubt about what had happened. As it turned out, Hannah had also slept with a man named Samuel. I forwarded all of Melanie's messages to my own email address and erased any traces of the keystroke logger. Afterward, I sent Benjamin a collection of these emails. That's how the truth emerged. The affair had begun almost immediately during the trip to Belize, and both women had swapped partners more than once. They were already arranging another meetup in Chicago the following month. The cover story was shopping, while Benjamin and I, supposedly attending a Blackhawks game, provided the alibi. A quick look at both Melanie's and Hannah's Facebook profiles showed two recent friends, Brian Spencer and Samuel Rhodes, both married and living in Illinois. The proof was undeniable. I finally had all the leverage I needed. But what came next wouldn't be simple. Benjamin was still struggling to accept reality. He kept everything to himself, never confronting Hannah or admitting to himself that she might have cheated. I understood. Melanie's caring attitude toward me and the kids made it hard to believe she would ever risk our family. Her affection sometimes made me second-guess everything, which helped preserve a sense of normalcy between us, even in our most intimate moments. One afternoon, I called Benjamin at his office. "Hey, Benjamin, it's James. Can you check your personal email from work?" "Yeah, sure," he replied. "I just sent you something important. Go through all of it and then call me back." About 30 minutes later, Benjamin called again, his voice shaking with anger. "I'm finished. I can't take this. I would have done anything for her. I loved her," he vented. "Take a minute, Benjamin," I said softly. "We need to think things through. I could really use your help right now. Let's keep this between us for the moment." "I don't know if I can manage that. I just feel like exploding," he confessed. "We'll figure this out, I promise. For now, just call home and leave a message saying you're working late." That evening, we met at a bar in the historic part of town to make a plan. Our first strategy session began. "What are our options for making them really pay for this?" I asked. Short of anything violent, obviously. Benjamin sat there in silence, anger etched across his face. "I want to embarrass them in front of everyone they care about," he finally said. "You know their dad, Thomas. He absolutely dotes on his daughters." Benjamin agreed. This was the route we'd take. Everyone's aware of this, obviously. Yet there's one thing he loathes even more than the IRS, and you know exactly what it is. Benjamin's mouth twisted into a sly smirk. "Unfaithful wives," he stated. Throughout Thomas's marriage, his ex-wife, the mother of Melanie and Hannah, had been secretly seeing other men, something Thomas only uncovered once their relationship was over. When their divorce was settled, she ended up with custody of the girls, took ownership of their home, locked in a generous alimony and child support agreement, and even managed to claim a large chunk of his business. To buy her out of the company, Thomas had to shoulder considerable debt. It took years of struggle to get his business back on solid ground. After finally selling it, Thomas was financially secure, but he lived alone. He still made time to visit his daughters and see his grandchildren whenever he could. I revealed my plan to Benjamin. We had just 2 weeks left to maintain our facade as dutiful husbands. "Just stick to my lead, Benjamin," I advised. "Come down with a few colds, rack up long hours at work, and make sure you're always too tired or sick for anything romantic." We'd put on a convincing performance about once a week for the sake of appearances. Soon, we'd be done with all of it. That night, as predicted, I got home much later than normal. Melanie was already in bed, so I pretended to have a splitting headache. My thoughts kept circling back to our plan for retribution, but eventually, exhaustion overtook me, and I fell asleep. Truthfully, I'd already started suspecting Melanie of being unfaithful, especially after she mentioned she and Hannah were planning a shopping trip to Chicago. I acted genuinely supportive of their idea, even suggesting they should stay in a nice hotel downtown. To really sell it, I made the hotel reservation myself with our shared credit card. The booking was made for Mr. and Miss Jarrett, double occupancy, since the sisters would be sharing a room. Melanie and Hannah were absolutely thrilled. Benjamin pitched in, offering to pay for the hotel too. He booked a room under Mr. and Miss Dalton, also set for double occupancy for Hannah and Melanie. We made sure each wife thought only one room had been arranged for the two of them. Of course, we both knew full well that neither woman intended to share a room, and we let them believe we were completely oblivious to their real plans. Their agenda was to take Friday off, catch an early flight to Chicago, and return late on Sunday. A few days later, I called Thomas Ramsey, Melanie's father, and proposed the idea of surprising the women in Chicago with the kids in tow, since the trip lined up with our 15th wedding anniversary. Thomas loved the suggestion. I asked him to reserve 3 rooms, and he agreed, thinking it would be a wonderful surprise. When it was time to drop Melanie and Hannah off at the airport, Benjamin and I were both seething inside. The two women acted like giddy teenagers off to meet secret boyfriends, laughing over nothing and bubbling with excitement. At the security checkpoint, we each kissed them goodbye on the cheek. Neither one seemed to notice that we never said, "I love you." Once we were on the road, I called our private investigator. "This is Jarrett," I said. "They'll be in Chicago soon. Are we ready?" Andrew Whitaker, our PI, assured me, "Yes, they'll be in rooms 201 and 203. All the surveillance equipment is in place. I'll have everything prepared for when you get here tomorrow." The next morning, we headed to the airport. During the flight, Thomas switched seats with my son Daniel and sat down beside me. "Look, son," he said quietly, "don't think I'm clueless. You and Benjamin look like you're on your way to a funeral. Tell me what's really happening." I came clean with Thomas and apologized for not telling him sooner. "I know how much you love your daughters," I said, "but you should know. They've been cheating, Thomas." He cut me off. "They're having affairs, aren't they?" I nodded. "Yes. They met a couple of men and spent 2 weeks with them in Belize. I've hired a private investigator to get all the evidence we'll need for divorce. As soon as we catch them in the act, we're filing." Thomas squeezed my shoulder reassuringly. "I'm truly sorry, son. I know how much this hurts. I always hoped my influence would outweigh their mother's, but I'm afraid her example left a deeper mark." Thomas's eyes grew misty. "I didn't think I could feel this kind of pain again," he murmured. He eventually composed himself and went back to his seat. When we landed in Chicago, Andrew Whitaker met us at the airport and handed envelopes to both Benjamin and me. Inside were incriminating photographs and a DVD with footage from the previous night. Andrew said a process server would be in touch soon, and his team was keeping watch on both rooms. His assistant would let us know when it was the right moment to confront them. The spouses of Spencer and Rhodes would be getting similar evidence packets by noon. Benjamin and I asked Thomas and Andrew to look after the kids for a while. We needed to see firsthand what our wives had been up to. My stomach twisted as I flipped through explicit photos of Melanie, including one of her with 2 men. The worst part, it was obvious they hadn't bothered with any protection. Benjamin and I immediately realized we'd need to get tested for STDs when we got back to Minneapolis. Andrew called his assistant to check on the hotel situation. The women and their companions had gone out for lunch, so for the time being, the coast was clear. Thomas went ahead and purchased 3 separate items. At the same time, Benjamin and I made our way to the reception desk to ask for additional key cards for rooms 201 and 203, which were both registered under our names. After confirming who we were, the receptionist provided us with the spare keys. We casually mentioned that our kids had arranged a surprise and asked the receptionist not to mention anything to our wives. Together, we all took the elevator up to the 3rd floor, where our rooms were located. Roughly an hour later, Andrew Whitaker called my phone. He let me know that everyone had returned from lunch and settled back into their rooms. He also noted that there had been a change in room pairings. Melanie was now with Rhodes, and Hannah had switched to being with Spencer. "I'm downstairs in the lobby, and the process server just walked in," he informed me. "I'll send him your way," I told Andrew, then hung up and sat upright on the bed. Turning to the kids, I spoke with energy. "Okay, let's get going. Sophie, Daniel, don't forget what I told you. Grandpa and I will go in first. When I signal, both of you shout, 'Surprise, Mom,' understand?" "Don't worry, Dad," Daniel answered. "And stay outside until I give the word," I reminded them. "We understand, Dad." "No problem," the kids reassured me. "All right, let's go." We climbed the stairs and paused outside room 201. I inserted the key card and eased the door open. Thomas and I stepped inside first, with the kids following. However, they didn't wait for my cue. Almost immediately, they burst out, "Surprise, Mom! We're here!" But what we found was Melanie in bed with Rhodes. Our sudden appearance caught them completely off guard. Rhodes scrambled off the bed, snatched his pants from the floor, threw them on in a rush, grabbed the rest of his things, and bolted from the room. He wasted no time getting out. Melanie, meanwhile, leapt up, desperately trying to pull on her clothes. "No, this isn't real. How did you all get in here?" she cried out in disbelief. "Look, Mommy's naked," Sophie blurted, squeezing between Thomas and me for a better look. I snapped my fingers, and the process server entered. "Are you Melanie Jarrett?" he asked the only woman in the room who wasn't dressed. "She's my mom," Sophie chimed in, trying to help. The process server handed Melanie a sealed envelope. "You've been served," he declared, snapping a quick photo of her clutching the envelope while she tried to cover herself. Just as quickly, he was gone. "Kids, let's give your mother a moment to get dressed," I said. We left Melanie sobbing on the floor, clearly aware of what the envelope contained. In the corridor, we met up with Benjamin and his kids. "Your turn, Benjamin," I said quietly. Things hadn't gone any better in Hannah's room. Spencer had reacted violently. When Spencer was caught, he lashed out, even hitting Thomas across the face. That was all the provocation Benjamin needed to jump in and punch Spencer. Meanwhile, Hannah surprisingly came to her father's defense, scratching Spencer on the face, one small but important show of support for him. I entered just then, dragged Spencer into the bathroom and tossed his clothes in after him. "Get dressed and leave," I said coldly. Thomas, Benjamin, and the kids exited the room. Hannah, apparently unfazed, followed them into the hallway, wrapped in nothing but a blanket. Benjamin gave her a stern glare. "Go put your clothes on," he told her. Looking chastised, Hannah turned and did as she was told. The process server, who had stepped out during the scuffle, now reappeared near the door. "James Jarrett?" he called. "That's me," I replied. He handed me an envelope. "You've been served." We all regrouped upstairs. Our initial plan had been to stay overnight and talk things through with our wives, but after what had transpired, I couldn't stand the thought of spending another night with Melanie. I packed our things and let the kids know we were leaving. Thomas told us he would stay behind. He wanted to have a conversation with his daughters. Benjamin and his children left with us, heading back to Minneapolis. 4 months later, after Melanie had begged for forgiveness countless times, the court finalized our uncontested divorce. Thomas struggled to get Melanie to agree to sign the paperwork. I kept the house, since it was mine before I'd married Melanie. I was also awarded primary custody of our kids, but I didn't ask Melanie for any child support. Thomas made sure she was taken care of financially. We divided the remaining assets, and that Christmas, Thomas surprised me with a generous gift to help me start fresh, telling me it would come out of Melanie's future inheritance. Benjamin's divorce unfolded in much the same way, except his home had to be divided, since both spouses owned it equally. In a twist of fate, not long after the divorce, Benjamin and Hannah rekindled their relationship. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up back together for good. As for Melanie and me, Reconciliation is impossible. Even though I believe she is genuinely remorseful and may still love me, I can't bring myself to forgive her. Her act of betrayal obliterated any affection I once held for her. What lingered was little more than the remnants of her disloyalty, scattered like cinders along the beaches of Belize. After that, loving her again became impossible. For the sake of our children, we manage a polite coexistence, but that's as far as I'm willing to go. One afternoon, as she waited for the kids to finish getting ready for their outing with her, she abruptly turned to me. "James, I need to know. How did you ever uncover what really happened in Belize?" "My secret is an appreciation for tan lines," I replied. She looked genuinely confused. "But I always wore a bikini. We never went to any nude beaches or anything like that." I nudged her memory. "Think about it, Melanie. When you used to clean the bathroom, working with all those harsh chemicals, what would you do first?" She thought for a moment. "I'd gather the cleaning supplies, slip on rubber gloves, and roll up my sleeves." I shook my head softly. "There's something else you always did before any of that. You always took off your rings, both the wedding band and the engagement ring, before you started cleaning." I paused, letting the silence draw out the truth. "But after Belize, your finger was bare. There wasn't even a tan line to show where your rings used to be." This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.